Bienvenue à tous, and this is probably where I'm going to stop French. So welcome everyone. Very pleased to welcome you in this evening here at the Meridiam's office. I hope that so far you had a great Infra Week. I know many of you are here the entire week and have been in Bercy yesterday to attend a few conferences, and then are continuing the tour this week until Friday, where there is a lot of events throughout Paris. And if you're not aware of it, I'm sure you could find some people in the room that will actually guide you to a successful Infra Week program. So also thank you very much for your interest into the topic. So today we're going to talk about FAST-Infra. So you can't miss it. It's actually everywhere. So you're going to hear all about it in a few moments. Some of you are very seasoned to FAST-Infra. And I've been partnering on this initiative from the very early days. Some of you are actually a bit more new to that FAST-Infra initiative. And I think that's also important that, we take the time, we take the time to explain in detail what it is, why we've actually created it, and also how now we're making progress towards really an uptake of all of the aspects of the FAST-Infra initiative. So the other thing is that we are in the end a very small group tonight. So I really want to make sure that, again, you get the best out of tonight's event, so that we could make sure that you could ask questions, so we keep this as interactive as possible. I think that's really an important point, because ultimately, as you will see, we will share a lot of information. So don't be shy. There is no dumb question, and we are really in a friendly environment here. Last but not least, on housekeeping. So this is tonight is under Chatham House rules. So that basically means that whatever you're going to say will not be attributed to you or to your organization. So you could actually speak very freely. So that's me, yeah. Oops, and I'm losing my point. That starts badly. So look. So I have been asked today, and I'm putting Daniel already. I'm a bit too much on the fast aspect of things. So so today, literally, we'll be hearing about the why we've done FAST-Infra, the what it is, and the how we're going to be implementing it. So let me start in my introductory remark to give you a bit of a glimpse of the why, and you will hear more actually from Daniel, but also from many of your participants tonight. So I think that the first question is that why are you at Meridiam's offices tonight? Beyond the fact that, they're pretty nice offices and fantastically located. For those of you who are not based in Paris, I think there is not really better offices. Sorry, just, very self-serve comments here. And I think that why we're here is that Thierry Deo, who is the CEO and the chairman of Meridiam, who cannot be with us tonight, he's in Africa tonight, is also the chairman of the FAST-Infra group. So that's basically also why Meridiam is particularly happy to host that event tonight. So FAST, what does it mean? So it's finance to accelerate the sustainable transition. And the FAST-Infra group was created in 2022 under the auspices of the One Planet Summit, which is a multi-stakeholder platform that French President Macron and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, and also at the time the World Bank President, put together. And this FAST-Infra group aims to provide solutions for mobilizing large-scale financing to accelerate sustainable infrastructure in the development worldwide. So, back again, for those of you who are not familiar, to where we're really coming from on FAST. So it was initially conceived collectively by the Climate Policy Initiative, so CPI, HSBC, OECD, IFC, World Bank Group, Global Infrastructure Facility, so called GIF, also for those of you who know that project preparation facility. And the FAST-Infra initiative became really the FAST-Infra group. So we started by this initiative, and then it became the group. So we actually have today representative, if I'm not wrong, from CPI, also HSBC, also our colleagues from the French Treasury, and also very grateful for the continuous support and leadership that all of those stakeholders have been providing and continue to provide to this initiative. So what does the FAST-Infra group does? So it obviously basically 3 different initiatives within that. First, the FAST-Infra Label, and this is basically what we're going to be talking about tonight, mainly. And then the FAST-Infra platform, with the idea to standardize access to infrastructure projects by increasing also the volume of bankable projects. So standardizing all of the projects documentation from origination to asset management. And then the FAST-Infra Beyond, which was really an idea that we need to bring a lot of innovation still into our infrastructure industry, not only on the technical side, but the financing side, the governance side, the regulatory side. And then under that particular chapter initiative, there is a few working groups and that actually working on those innovations. So again, tonight, it's not too much about the platform and the beyond. It's really about the label itself. So, now let me share also why Meridiam entered into FAST-Infra at the beginning, as I said, with many other partners that we had, and why we actually are, really ready to continue pushing and demonstrate leadership on that matter. So as we are really, amongst friends, I'm sure many of you will smile at the idea of we need to create infrastructure as an asset class. Well, for many years, all of us have been able to work in developing and investing into projects without having an asset class. Now, what we miss is that ultimately to scale it up, because we keep talking about we need more and better infrastructure, the reality is that it won't happen just by goodwill and things that could not be replicated. So that was really the idea of the FAST-Infra Label at the beginning, which is basically to say, let's have a common understanding about what is sustainable infrastructure. Because ultimately, and for those of you who know me from my previous job, I used to lead the G20 Infrastructure Agency. And for years, we tried to work with various governments and trying to showcase what would be the benefit. Well, the benefit would be that we will get closer to an asset class, but at the same time, sustainability per se was still very difficult to define. So the label itself started from an initiative across many MDBs, across, as I've all actually mentioned all of those already, but it's probably 7 or 8 years old already. And so I would say that the FAST-Infra Label is really the culmination of many years of discussion, aggregation of existing label to actually come to a one-stop shop label, which is now FAST-Infra. And so on that note, I think I would like to introduce Daniel. So Daniel Wiener is the chairman of Global Infrastructure Basel. And so, well, amongst many other things, your career in the last 40 years, I wish it would be 14, huh? Yeah. So it basically spans across, like you are an urban planner, you are an you've been working in ecology. So he has done many, many different things, but also has been a very strong advocate of sustainable infrastructure. And so I will give you the floor now so you could actually provide a little bit more of your insights about your involvement into FAST-Infra Label. So I must say that, first of all, Global Infrastructure Basel, and we have many of our Global Infrastructure Basel colleagues over here, they're actually the secretariat of the FAST-Infra Label. So they're actually running all of the day-to-day operations, but really interested to hear about your perspective about, why Global Infrastructure Basel supported, what are the actual benefits of the FAST-Infra Label.
Okay. Thank you, Marie, and thank you very much for your warm welcome and for hosting this event. Thanks Meridiam for hosting the event. To have this crowd in front of us, to be on the trajectory to launching actually the label and the repository for the data of the label in a few weeks. We're actually like a pre-premiere guests, and at the same time you're also like a dream come true. You're the proof that it's worthwhile dreaming. Like we dreamt of that asset class 12 years ago. We thought that it needed a label, and we thought that it's important to aggregate data so that we can give institutional investors the opportunity to really invest into infrastructure as they do into stock or bonds or real estate or whatever they have as asset class. So an asset class that has ambitions somewhere between equity and debt, but separately. So that was the vision, that was the dream. But dreams are dangerous if you don't share them and if you don't find allies. And the allies sit in this room, and that's what was possible, and it needed some time, 12 years of time. And Meridiam was a very important partner in that. So thanks a lot. But also other organizations that are represented here are important partners, co-dreamers, I would call them. But now it's a dream come true. And a dream come true means you have partners who share the dreams, but then you have to work hard and to make sure that it has that it's useful for everybody. If it's not useful, it remains a dream. And how is it useful? I think the main idea of the FAST-Infra label is to create a common ground, a common language between different stakeholders. All of you who are involved in infrastructure know that successful infrastructure is the art of creating successful infrastructure is a multi-stakeholder involvement. And this multi-stakeholder approach has to be around one language. If you don't have one language, you have a problem. So everybody speaks English, but that's not enough. You also have to understand the same thing about the same word. You said sustainability, you know. We sometimes also say resilience. Resilience is a very important part of the FAST-Infra label. And as you see from all the catastrophes that we see around us that are destroying infrastructure, it's so important that they can resist what disasters and that they can recover quickly. That's our definition of resilience. Plus, we also add regeneration. We need also regenerative infrastructure because the world has gone down too far for the infrastructure not to help to go back up. So that's the resilience part of infrastructure that we're working on with the FAST-Infra label, with all of its partners. And I think with that thought, we also can address pressing issues for governments and for NGOs and for populations and for democratic processes that bring infrastructure about. And the reason why infrastructure matters in all of these areas is that infrastructure actually is not only the basis of well-being and good living, but also actually determines whether we go in the right direction or the wrong direction with our planet. For instance, in the field of CO2, 80% of the CO2 emissions worldwide are determined by the infrastructure, whether it's available or not available, and if it's available, if it's the right infrastructure that actually is sustainable, resilient, and regenerative. And with that, I would like to pass on to the next speaker. So thank you very much for your attendance here for tonight. And I'll be around, and my colleagues will be around if you have questions about all of these things.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for framing a little bit more even the why we have FAST-Infra. I think that's definitely very helpful in setting up for the next intervention. So Jana Blank, she leads the Bloomberg New Energy Finance, the BNEF data team. It's a very interesting job. In EMEA, so you're really focusing on Europe and Africa. You're responsible for data sets that are related to the energy transition, in particular, including renewable projects, financing, energy storage, electric vehicle, and basically work with BNF analysts on the research and all of the reports. So you will tell more, maybe when you'll start, about the involvement of Bloomberg itself, because I think, look, as we were saying earlier, and Daniel said, it's an assembly of friends, but we need a village to basically try to push forward on what sustainability is for infrastructure and how to embed it. So I think your work is definitely one key element of all of that. And so you will tell us more about FAST-Infra dimension and criteria. Also the data structure that you are putting together on this portal demo that I think you're going to just show us a glimpse about, just screenshot. But there will be opportunity to learn more. Jana.
Great, thank you very much. Very excited to be here and to share a bit more about the data portal that my team and I have been working on over the past, well, more than a year, really. I do lead the BNF data team, but in addition, we've also been working on this FAST-Infra portal. Should I have the... Yeah. So one thing I wanted to really highlight in this presentation, because I know that GIB and supporters in the room have been sharing information about the FAST-Infra Label framework while we've been kind of working behind the scenes as the data repository. And as Daniel already mentioned, over the next few weeks, we'll actually be able to go live with what we've been building. So I think this is a good opportunity to highlight what our role is as a data repository in this initiative, and then also what our vision is for the market deliverable, which is really around the data. And to start, I wanted to share one of our kind of thought processes, I guess, at Bloomberg, which is if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So it really is about the data for us. We really have one core principle with any product development strategy that we start, especially around data products. And it is to incentivize disclosure and also help establish standards and frameworks that will create a foundation of trustworthy and transparent information on sustainability, particularly. And we do have a long track record of successfully standardizing and categorizing data for comparability and consistency across different domains, such as companies, sectors, regions, but also time series. This is what we do, and we're very proud to bring this expertise to the FAST-Infra Label, and as a result, hopefully apply the standardization rigor to sustainable infrastructure data. Really, what we've seen as a company and also throughout this process, throughout this project, is that there's a need for a consolidated data set on sustainable infrastructure. With standardized fields, and you'll hear me say the word standardized a lot, so I hope you take that away from my presentation. Standardized fields that are aligned with accepted and existing frameworks and standards that eventually allow for cross-comparison and also aggregation and analysis, because only if you have standardized data that you can compare across domains, sectors, projects, you'll be able to aggregate and analyze that. However, in order to achieve this, in order to actually get all of that data, we need to make it easy for project submitters to submit this data to us. And that's where this data platform, the data portal that we've been building, comes in. It makes it easy for project participants to submit data to us, and eventually also for a verifier to access that data, evaluate it, and issue a verified label if requirements are met. So what we aim to achieve with the FAST-Infra Label and the resulting data product is a product that is standardized and of high quality. It is transparent. It is easy to access and to comprehend, and hopefully that'll become clear when I share some of the screenshots. It is scalable across industries. If you have a data product that is set up right with the right taxonomy, you can easily add additional sectors to it. And it is also difficult to greenwash in the end because it is data-driven, and through the verification process, it has been verified. So ultimately, throughout this process, we aim to create an investable asset class of sustainable infrastructure. Now, this is where the portal comes in. As I said before, the design of the portal needs to make it easy for project submitters to submit data and show through that data that they're adhering to the standards that the FAST-Infra Label is asking for, to essentially demonstrate label compliance. And again, over the next few slides, I'll show you what that design looks like. As a result, once we acquire the data, have the data, it enters the platform, it enters the data set, we will have a data set that will enable investors and other stakeholders to see that projects have met minimum safeguards and risk assessments, or they are committing to do so. They have provided all the necessary data and also supporting evidence if that's required. And they have been verified against a robust list of approximately 400 environmental, social, adaptation resilience, and governance metrics to assess baseline sustainability, but also positive contribution. So overall, in our eyes, with all the experience we have building data products, this will qualify as a robust data product. because it is standardized. So from project to project, the same field is comparable. We will only allow specific answers through drop-down options in the portal. So there are limited free text field options, which means that from one project to the next, you can compare answers. We will ask for quantitative information where that is possible to enable analysis and aggregation, as I mentioned before. We're aligning with multiple existing frameworks and standards to ensure interoperability in the future between standards and frameworks based on data. You will have transparent data through this product. There'll be clear justification for the label award because it will be based on data. And there'll be clear eligibility. So there'll be clear rules for the label award as we are using thresholds for acceptable answers, which will avoid subjective decision-making. So now, the portal. This is what these are screenshots, right? But this is what the design of the portal looks like. And it is uniquely tailored to the individual user. So as a project submitter, as well as a verifier, you enter the same platform, the same portal, just through different access points. So what I'm showing you right now is the point of view of a submitter. So once you start, well, you've created an account, you have login credentials, you will be able to start an application. You will start with the name of your project, and then you'll be able to invite collaborators, so individuals from other companies, your own company, to work on this submission with you. And then these are some of the screenshots. These are some screenshots showing what the portal looks like in terms of the questions that are being asked and the project information, as well as the minimum safeguards, the risk assessments, and the metrics or indicators that I mentioned earlier. So you can see that it is interactive, and the questionnaire is dynamically adjusted based on which project submits the data, meaning that you will have different drop-downs that will have the same responses, but they might adjust dynamically based on what kind of project you are. Because if you are a solar farm, you might not need to answer the same questions as a transport project. I'm just giving an example that came to my mind. So this is what this part looks like. And then automatically, you'll be able to get a self-assessed label. All of this happens programmatically because we have standardized the indicators, the drop-downs, the answer options, so that we can programmatically assess if you're meeting the requirements of the FAST-Infra label, and you'll be able to immediately get a self-assessed label. What you can see on the left-hand side is a result of such an application. So you can see, I don't know, I guess you can't really see it, but the different indicators across the E, the S, and the G, and which one were successfully passed, which one resulted in a positive contribution. So you have this result in as part of your portal. On the right, you can see a summary of different applications. So any project submitter can contribute through several applications, and you can see them kind of going through different label statuses and processes here. Because the label, as any infrastructure project, will go through a life cycle. So any project could become, could be announced, be under construction, could be operational. So all of these different statuses might lead to different labels through the lifetime of a project. So yeah, this is to show that a project can go, or a project submitter can have different applications in the portal at the same time. Now, this was the point of view of the project submitter. Now we're taking the point of view of the verifier. You can see that it is the exact same design. The verifier will log in, will have login credentials, and will have access to the project data that a project submitter previously submitted to the project. The verifier will then be able to see the different metrics, criteria, and the answers supplied by the project submitter, and will then be able to assess whether those answers are compliant or not. Because one thing we can do programmatically and using data is to assess whether the data meets certain criteria. We cannot assess whether the data is untrue. So that's kind of the role of the verifier to guard ourselves against greenwashing. And then after the project verification, you will also see a verification summary. So all of this is coming soon. We're actually hosting a webinar in early December, on the 3rd of December, to show you the portal and walk you through it with some actual test data to show you how it works. We're currently testing it with our engineering team. We're in the final stages of promotion, which is very exciting. So if you're interested in attending the webinar on the 3rd of December, you can find a QR code there. And I think we'll show it throughout the evening as well. So that is my sneak peek to the portal. I hope it was insightful. And if you have any additional questions, yeah, I'll be here for the rest of the evening.
Thank you very much, Anna, for that presentation. Before we getting into the panel, maybe there are some questions from any of you. And there is no dumb question, sorry. Because I think I was having one for myself, is like, who are the verifiers, right? Can you maybe just elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think we jumped straight from the why to almost a bit the how. So maybe if you could actually give a little bit more information about who are they and how they're selected, I think that would be helpful. At least that's the first question. I'm sure there will be more.
Sure, I'll start answering that question, and if anyone from JIB wants to chip in, that'd be great as well. There'll be a list of verifiers that are trained by JIB on the label and how to verify project submissions. And there's a link between that list and the project submission, so you can select which verifier you want from the list of acceptable verifiers that JIB has trained. I can't speak to who exactly these verifiers are. Maybe someone can.
What I can say is the self-assessment is open, accessible, and free, and that's very important. That's a very unique approach to have such a good information base also for yourself. When you fill this out, you learn a lot about your project. That's really interesting because you can realize what kind of questions can be asked, for instance, by investors. But then on the other hand, the verifiers, of course, have a price, and I'm not quite familiar with the price structure. It would be interesting to know that, but maybe Roger, you know that, or Chen Chen, can you come to explain who are the verifiers that we have so far? And so introduce yourself quickly. And
good evening, I'm Roger. I work for Global Infrastructure Basel, responsible for the global uptake of the label. Is that working? Is it working? Okay, it's better. Thank you. Yes, we train free verification companies, Bureau Veritas. We have Frederick here, so it's going to be nice to also chat with him about it. We also train at SGS and Socotec. This is an open process. We are going to train every year new companies that are interested, but so far we are able to verify any type of project anywhere in the globe because we're counting on strong companies. The price may vary, the complexity of the project, where the project is, some materiality things that might consider the idea of having a verifier in place or doing an online verification. So it might comes from 10,000 to 50,000, which is not a great thing to say in terms of the range, but it really depends on where the project is and what type of project is. But this is where we are in terms of verification.
And I may add to that we have a plan to create a fund that gives projects access to funding for verification, and they pay it back at financial close.
Just to add a point, it's a pretty important point. We have recently signed an agreement with SECO, which is the Swiss government. So we have in this repayable grant, which is going to be launched in the first month of next year. And this is what it is. We know that projects that when they are seeking for finance, they are like facing the valley of lack of resources, lack of people to run this kind of assessment. So the Swiss government is going to pay for the verification, and then if the project got access to finance, then the project will return to this repayable grant. So this is, thank you. Anyway, I really forgot to mention this.
Yeah, thank you for those clarification. I don't know if there is any other questions from the audience.
I can speak now.
Perfect.
For you.
Yeah, but it doesn't work so well. Yeah, maybe you can increase the volume.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah, it's failure.
Hello. It was before.
Okay, I think it's time to speak loud.
So his face is too far away.
You have to be on the spot. Yeah, come on. That was all staged.
So,
It's better.
That works.
it's better. Yes. Thank you very much for the presentation.
We'll get there.
I had a simple question. The metrics, the evaluation metrics, are they linked to the ESRS standards? I'm thinking of CSRD and the ESRS standards. Is there a sort of direct read through?
Try this one. I can also stand up for the nurse.
There is a magic recipe, but try that one.
Both.
Sounds like a much more safer.
Okay. So Bloomberg in this initiative serves as the data repository. So we're obviously working closely with GIB on implementing the metrics, but the design of the label and the metrics themselves is coming from GIB as the secretariat of the label. To answer your question though, yes, that is part of it. We're mapping to, I think, around 55 existing standards and frameworks. And on the data side, we're also kind of planning for future interoperability with other standards. But the exercise of the mapping and designing the metrics and the label framework, that sits with GIB, but we obviously work closely with them to then make sure that that's implemented in the same way on the data side.
I can also add to that from a political angle. When we came to the FAST-Infra Label and the idea of the FAST-Infra Label, the big issue was that there's so many labels globally and so many organizations, and if you have a mixed funding for your infrastructure from different sources, be it even private investors but also multilateral or other concessional finance, then everybody has different labels or different requirements. And by integrating, as Jana said, all these criteria, which are overlapping, mainly overlapping, because around the globe, similar ideas pop up about sustainability. If you integrate everything into this data repository, every investor can refer to that label and say, okay, it's nice that our criteria are integrated. And eventually we will also come up with mutual recognition of these labels so that the IFC recognizes that FAST-Infra includes their criteria and also the other way around, so that the world becomes much simpler for project developers. That's actually the main idea, or one of the main ideas of the label, apart from the asset class.
Thank you very much. Thanks for this presentation and the presentation of your platform on your tool. It looks very simple, then attractive. So we imagine that it will save some time for us, the investors. But my concern is maybe what is behind the simple screen and the spreadsheet you demonstrated here. What is the level of information that are deemed to be integrated in terms of list of questions, or it is some data compiled that somebody is working out to extract the criteria, So that's my concern, the amount of work ready and the presentation of all those data behind the screen. That's the first question. And the second question is maybe in comparison to some other label, which are the Greenfield label or ISR label, which are for you the same kind of label, or what is the aim or the difference with those labels? Thanks a lot.
Between you two, you can.
Yeah, I think so. So your first question, if I understood it correctly, was around kind of the database behind because what I was showing now is the user interface, right? Like where you, the UI, where you input the data that then feeds the database. And your question was around like the security of that data, or the
amount of the list of questions, or how you digest the data information from a project, which can be quite huge in terms of elements to be analyzed and sensitized, to extract the simple, ESG criteria at the end, which are around 10-15 lines. I believe that behind you have to address many information to extract those chosen ESG criteria, I believe.
the data on our end will be as entered, as reported by the project submitters. So it will be up to them to fill out the form. So I know that there'll be some documentation that project submitters will draw from, but it will be up to them to enter the correct information into the platform. We're just storing the data.
Okay, and with the sample you demonstrated, it takes how long roughly for your example, the example you shown?
That depends, I believe. JB has done some.
Average.
Sorry, I didn't get the
Oh, sorry.
the
How long it takes?
assessments are taking from 40 hours to 80 hours of work.
Okay.
40 hours the project is well organized or simple. 80 hours if you have like more people involved and you have to get the data. The biggest difference is like it's also because of data standardization. There is no open questions, like there's no need to disclose heavily what you're doing. It's like yes or no, or committing to do this in the future if you're on the development stage. So it's a rigorous framework, but at the same time, it's easy to fill out because it's like a binary, mostly binary.
Very specific and targeted,
Yes,
and
exactly.
thank you, it's exactly what I was looking
The documents
after.
are like, we have the set of 10 documents, which is like the evidences for self-assessment, and it should be verified by the verifiers if the project decides.
So it's still bearable by the teams because it takes time, of course, to have this add up and this complement of art and quality, project analysis. So
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. We will have also a project representative again.
Yeah, I was about to say, we'll be able to ask those questions. I think it's a great segue to the actual panel itself, because I think ultimately you will hear from EBRD, you'll also hear from Acciona. There are more projects. So, now the phase is really uptaking the label itself. And then that means increasing that uptake is getting more projects on there. So there are a few companies that are pioneering that. Meridiam is one of them. And you have a person in the room that are actually taking care of that. So we'll be able to discuss that. There's also Macquarie, BRD, Acciona. So I think we're really now starting to get really into the weeds. So I think that's the segue for me to bring the panel on. So maybe I will ask my panelists to come and sit next to me. And you will have more opportunity to ask questions in any case after the panel. So I'm joined by Marcus Martinez, who I'm delighted to finally meet in person, because we had many opportunity to meet virtually over the last year. So Marcus is the head of PVP advisory at the EBRD, is responsible for the preparation and implementation of PVP projects, supporting many governments across EBRD's countries of operations. And really with the view to develop infrastructure projects and maximizing both, the economic development, but environment and social benefits. So great to have you on board, because I think through that work that you do at the EBRD, which is definitely more upstream than the lending activity, you are playing a key role to ensure that best practices, standards and label could be integrated into government's processes, and at least starting with way of thinking. So I think it's great to have EBRD overall supportive, but in particular your unit that I think is playing a key role on that regulatory environment. We also joined by Edith Guerrera Bustamante, and she's the head of sustainability at Acciona. She's coming tonight from Madrid. So, I think we're very lucky to have you. Thank you very much for making the time and coming all this way. So you are at Acciona working directly within the CEO's office. And then you lead an interdisciplinary team that is actually working on the development and the implementation of a sustainable strategy and a sustainability master plan in the construction business of Acciona. Obviously, it's a very large organization. And then, obviously, I'm not going to introduce him again, despite, Daniel always need a bit more of an introduction. But let me deep dive into some questions for you, Marcos, as a Kickstarter. So, literally, we've heard from the audience already about, what it is to pilot the label, and I'm really interested to hear from you. First, if you can explain a little bit more in detail the work that you're doing on the PPP unit and the projects that were piloted by EBRD. I think that would be very insightful for everyone.
Okay, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be in this very nice building and sharing what we are doing. So within EBRD, we have the development role to help our countries where we operate. I have the privilege to manage a small team. We are a team of 12. And effectively what we do, some of you know, we help public sector clients in structuring PPPs, concessions, so contracts where the private sector is going to provide long-term financing and long-term infrastructure services. We do that within the banking team, so we are close to the banking team, but always working upstream. So you will hear then a different view what is getting this label for a project that is under construction. For me and my team is more about projects that are first in developing countries and second in the early stage. We work, assuming you know EBRD, but we work Central Europe, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and North Africa. So we have a very regional mandate. That means that effectively we are working now approximately 20 transactions with few countries very active. Okay, and that means that we have more resources in Egypt, in Uzbekistan, in Greece, and before the war in Ukraine as well. But then we also have few pilot projects. Okay, we are doing one project in the Czech Republic, a very interesting one. We are doing projects in Jordan. But probably what is interesting for the discussion today is when we work in projects, we require our counterparties, our clients, so the public sector, the Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Energy, to commit to develop the project according to EBRD policies. Okay, and EBRD policies are mainly environmental and social policies and procurement policies. So effectively the projects need to be publicly awarded, going through a public tender, and also meet EBRD environmental and social standards, which are pretty much the same as IFC performance standard that we mentioned before. So in this context, we were asked by FAST to pilot this label. Okay, and honestly, we look at what projects will make sense, and we pick 3 projects. One of them is already self-assessed as with the label, and then that project is irrigation project in Greece. I mean, has many ticks to, but still it was challenging. So 40 hours is probably in the low range. In our case, it was a little bit more, and you need a lot of external support with advisors, with environmental consultants. And in my view, it also depends a lot on the nature of the project. So this project is reconstruction of all irrigation system, is 150,000 acres of land. It provides the water from the intake through, I think it's 150 kilometers of pipes in primary and secondary network to the farmers. Okay, so it has a massive impact in the ground. It has a massive impact in the rural area, and it has a massive impact in the farmers. So we had to make changes. We have to include some criteria in terms of the use of the water. Irrigation traditionally is been done by let the water flow. Here is no, the water is a scarce resource, especially in Greece, and the farmers will have a specific amount of time to use the water in a specific amount. And we include that not as a FAST, we had it in place, but we need to demonstrate to FAST that that is in there. And the other important point is for us, because we are upstream, when really makes sense and provides value, this label is before the procurement, where we can demonstrate to the Meridiams, the Accionas, the companies that the project they are bidding, they want to invest, has had this, in my opinion, high detail level of due diligence, environmental, social, and governance. Because if we go to the procurement with this label, and we are doing it now in 2 projects that I also want to mention, it adds a lot of value, right? It helps investors to come into our country operations, and it's for me, for Marcos, for EBRD, it adds value. And I need to convince also my public clients that the project is going to be slightly more expensive, it's going to take slightly more time, because we want to include this. And that's, for me, the big value added. Unfortunately, because we work upstream, then the implementation of the project is up to the successful bidder. So we did that in the Greek project, and we also are doing it, we don't have the label yet, in a fascinating project for a rail connection between Prague and the airport. Very nice project that's going to start tendering next month. Again, we had to do a new sound assessment of the impact of the rail into the properties. We have to look at specific ants that is there, and also people that are being using the land for informal use as urban gardens, and they will be impacted by the project. So that is something that, again, we are doing it and will contribute through FAST. Finally, the other project that is hopefully being certified very soon is the desalination plant in Egypt. Again, desalination is a technology that is very sensitive because it's very intensive in energy consumption. So there is also a lot of technology, but a very expensive technology really to recover energy in the process, to blend renewables. But again, obviously renewables have their problems when you need constant water, right? All that, again, a great value for us. We really hope that by being able to show that in the tender, we are able to bring investors to these projects in challenging markets, in challenging economies, but hopefully the label will really help to bridge the gap and ultimately achieve better financial close at a lower cost, with more interest from institutional investors, hopefully going in the long-term to capital market. So there is so much value, but I think it will take time really to see the impact of this. I want to stop here.
I think that's very useful to hear, because I think, EBRD as a leading MDB in so many places, and you're also now getting into South Africa with 6 countries that have been approved. So I think, what you said is quite key, because, investors like us, we have a very, like long partnership with EBRD where we work with you and follow you. And so I think it's also very important, because piloting and pioneering that label will also give the signal to investors that are eventually still debating that this is actually adding value, and also ensuring that you help to have those projects being better prepared and then better ready for commercial and financial close. So I think ultimately having you into that very early piloting is a great thing that we could all celebrate today. So now let me turn to you, Edith. So I'm in Acciona as a developer, as an operator. I'm interested to hear really where you see in terms of long-term durability and sustainability in the design and the construction of your infrastructure assets. How is FAST-Infra aligned with this objective? And that's a more generic question, but I think, what would be also interesting is that if you could put this into perspective with that Metro Line 6 projects that you've got in Brazil.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the question and for inviting us to be here today. I'm also part of the steering committee of FAST-Infra Label, involved since 2 years ago, and I have been understanding what is the process, what are the indicators behind all and what is the tool now being developed. And what I would like to start saying that why we were involved in this, and it's mainly because the alignment of the sustainability strategy of in our case, our company, and in this case, this label was the only one that we found that could help us in this regenerative approach that you mentioned, Daniel, at the beginning. You can claim for positive contribution in this label, which is not quite common to see in other kind of systems that could help you in defining the sustainability levels of what the projects that you are working on. In our case, we are developers, we are operators, and one thing that I really like about this scheme is that you can enter in the scheme in different stages of the project, and since the early beginning, which is quite important because that would let the different stages to continue with this sustainability that has stated in the sustainability indicators or at least schemes that has been set since the beginning. So it's really useful. But also once you start in the design phase or in the construction phase or even in the operation phase, you have different indicators for each of the phases. And this is something that is really quite different from other systems that also operate in sustainability, and I really like and appreciate in this scheme, because this can adapt to the different operations that you are doing that while the whole life cycle of the project. And in the case of we have now self-assessed one of our projects. This is a Line 6 metro in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, which is a really huge project. We are building it, so now it's in construction phase, but we are going to operate that in also from the concession business of Acciona. And in this project, I have here some numbers, so I'm looking my phone because I don't know the I need to read them, but just for you to understand. And this is a really huge metro project. We have 15 stations, which is nearly 3,000 million euros of project. It has been built with a tunnel boring machine with 15 kilometers of tunnel boring machine. That can give you an idea of the investment of this huge project, and the impact generated also under the construction side, because the consumption of material, 77 million of steel in terms of concrete, 980 million cubic meters of concrete. We are now using 430 million square meters of area, and this will cover the whole site. Will help 633 million passengers, 633,000 passengers per day. That means that it's a really huge project, and we will be also operating that during nearly 25 years. So all the measures of sustainability measures that we are implemented in the beginning would help the operation phase. So this is why this is so important to incorporate them since the early stages. That will affect also the operation, but also will affect the end of life, because this infrastructure will have these indicators since the beginning. And in this case, what the value that this kind of a scheme also give us, as in the case of a contractor, you were mentioned before the question regarding how the indicators deals with the CSRD. And if you need the granularity of the CSRD to understand all what you are being asked for quantifying the different environmental, social, resilience indicators that you have in the tool. And the good thing is that they are done in a really easy way of just selecting, because behind that selection you have a really the composition of all what they mean and what you need to include there. So you need to take in terms of, let's say, about CO2 emissions. So you need to understand and have the granularity that the CSRD is asking when you declare the emissions of your projects. You need to have them in order to finally fulfill what the label is asking. So it really links with your objectives, but also helps you in identifying what are the gaps that you would need if you would like to accomplish with an SBTI objective, or at least accomplish with what is mandatory now, which is our CSRD. So I really think that is completely linked. It's not exactly the indicators, because in the case of CSRD, these are at organizational level, and you have to define your own procedures and how you are going to gather this information. But this can help you if you don't have these objectives. This can help you in how to organize them in order to ask these questions, and also to ask the organizational responsibilities when communicating your sustainability performance. And in this case, in Metro Sao Paulo, we have asked for positive contribution in 4 different indicators in climate change, in biodiversity, in circular economy, gender, and in human labor rights. So this has helped us to introduce some of the measures that we were introducing in the project, to put them into value, and we could ask for this positive contribution within the project. So we are quite happy with, and we are quite engaged with this label, because this is completely aligned with our strategy, and this can help us in implementing that in our projects.
Can I just carry on? So I'm extremely happy and proud to hear all of that. You know, one of the reasons is also just anecdotal, that I was helping the city of Sao Paulo very early on to develop this metro line, and that's one of the sources of the FAST-Infra Label, very far back with Mayor Casab at the time. So it's like a circle that's closing. So it's also a very emotional thing for me to hear what you said. Can I ask a question to the 2 panelists, if you allow? My question is maybe a little bit daring, but do you think that there is an opportunity with all the de-risking that takes place by applying the label and by showcasing the development, that even the banks would listen to you and would lower the interest rates for a project that is assessed and verified based on the label? Is that a perspective? Is that an opportunity? Do you think that that's possible?
Well, this is something that we hope with in the terms of the operation phase. We have now signed up ESG financing with specific KPIs, local KPIs, because we have a sustainable framework for financing that has been created. So we really believe in that this label will help us in obtaining these advantages, these financial advantages. Not sure if in this project, because we have now obtained some of them because of our framework, but in other projects we really see this the value. So we see this as a clear opportunity.
I think so. So I mean, obviously there is for projects with good impact, there is a lot of concessional financing in place, and but probably we need to be more aggressive and look for better terms, not only from IFIs or donor-funded projects, also from commercial banks. Commercial banks, when they price their projects, they go through a risk assessment, and now they are taking into account environmental and sustainability. So hopefully with this brand, they will be able really to input into their models, risk models, and hopefully that results in a lower price. If that is happening now, probably, I don't know, but it's clear that banks do look at this. Okay, we when we finance projects, we have commercial banks coming with us, and they do ask the questions regarding environmental and social.
I'm also interested to hear, maybe because we were talking about commercial banks, I know we have a few into the room. I don't know if one of you feel like maybe HSBC representative, if we actually made it in the end. Don't see any hand being raised. You're there. Do you want to add a little bit more on that? I mean, I know, look, the reality is that it's a difficult market for banks currently in infrastructure. I mean, because of regulatory capital requirements, as a follow-up of the GFC, I mean, with Basel III and now Basel IV being enforced, I mean, you're not allowed to use your internal models and so on. So you're actually facing quite a lot of turmoil just to be able to keep infrastructure on your books. But I think ultimately, and this is one of a discussion that we will continue to have under FAST-Infra Beyond, which is also when you think about in the insurance, EIOPA, the European regulators for insurers, has been able to kind of use what we call a qualifying infrastructure factor to actually provide a discount to that buffer that they need to put in place. So, you know, one of the hope could be that if people are sufficiently behind a label like FAST-Infra, is that, you know, gradually, I'm not saying the regulators are going to be moving just because we had a nice discussion tonight, but I think ultimately there is probably some I mean, it's definitely an avenue, but that will require a lot of push. But I don't want to say more, and I was just trying to also say that, you know, the context for banks is not necessarily easy, but I think ultimately, as Daniel said, we need to create more incentives. And I think Daniel mentioned early that, you know, creating an incentive for the project developer or the government to just be sponsored, so they don't see this as an extra cost, is one element of that incentive stack, if I must say. But I don't know if you want to add anything. Feel free to. Gosh, I should move from equity to debt then. Huh?
I can add. Yeah, what I can add as an encouragement is that the GIB accidentally, so our office is across the street from the BIS, and we're working with very enlightened staff within the BIS to promote that idea. You know, initially when climate change became an issue for financial stability, the BIS basically didn't believe it until Mark Carney came in and said, we need to do it. And so we're looking for allies within the BIS, also for governors, if you know any governors from specific regulators from specific countries. We try to work our way into the BIS so that maybe Basel 5 but maybe even Basel 4 will give some discounts for infrastructure assets that have really strong performances based on the FAST-Infra criteria.
Yeah, so I think definitely a discussion to continue under FAST-Infra beyond. I mean, Daniel and I have been discussing this for quite some time. I think there is more that needs to be done. It's not going to be easy, but I think ultimately all of us professional in infrastructure for the last 25 years, we will all want to see that speed and that scale. So there is no other way than just to try harder. We'll get there. So, but Daniel, I'm going to turn back to you again, because in the light of what we've heard from developer and an operator, we've also heard from an MDB. I mean, as I was mentioning earlier, Meridiam as an equity investor is also piloting the label. There is also Macquarie. So you've got a number of stakeholders already that are really championing all of that. And in the light of what was discussed tonight, I mean, could you give us maybe just a snapshot of the ambition for the label in the next 6 months to 12 months? I mean, obviously, we've heard from Miana, and I'm sorry because the screen has decided that, there was end of day, EOB has been reached, so it doesn't work anymore. But ultimately, there will be definitely the launch of the portal, and then this opportunity to actually join that webinar, so you could actually see more than just some snapshot and get into the weeds and ask the tricky question about how difficult this is going to be. But beyond that, really interested to hear on the strategic point of view. How do you see the label ambition?
Yeah, so it is strategic, but it's mainly operational. Now we sometimes you're done with strategy and you need to implement. So I'll pass on the word maybe to Shen Chen from the team of the GIB, who's currently also seconded to Meridiam for a couple of weeks, and he will tell you more about the operational rollout of I think, if that's okay, Shen Chen.
So from the application portal point of view, we are in our full rollout mode of acquiring projects. We are attending major international fora for events like this to attract projects from both developers, from equity providers, from lenders when we talk to them to attract more. So that's on the project rollout. And in terms of the framework development, it's a ever-evolving framework. It will be a living standard because more regulations will come, and we try to streamline with all of them. And the tricky part is the devil is always in the details, because the level of granularity will never be the same. Sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's a regulation, sometimes it's some guidelines, and we will keep integrating all these regulations, voluntary ones or mandatory ones, to inside the framework. And at the same time, we will also roll out this specific work stream on cross recognition or mutual recognition or interoperability, however you name it, with different labels and standards, so that at the end of the day, we envision that the once a project is labeled with the FAST-Infra, then how much % with whichever specific one will be also automatically recognized. So these are the in the next 6 months to 12 months we will continue working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Shen Chen.
Thank you very much for that overview. So once again, it's a lot of information, and I am completely aware of the fact that some of you are quite, seasoned to all of that. For some of you, it's actually new. So really wanted to also give you again the opportunity to ask maybe any burning question you have on what we've heard, and maybe on the next steps. Anyone? We're getting closer to just the drinks. I see. I appreciate.
Well, thank you very much for the presentation and for the panel. Thank you very much. Well, I have a very simple question. I mean, I understand for investors there's an interest, but for developers, I mean, don't you think it's an additional work? Because when you have to, well, investors and developers. Don't you think it's an additional work? Because when you have to ask for debt, for instance, well, I mean, the banks will ask you information because they have their own criterion. And if FAST-Infra Label doesn't, well, there is no overlap, I mean, it would be double work for investors. Don't you think that is a risk to have more work, more to do in order to get debt, to get, well, that's a stupid question, but I think it.
No, I think it's actually quite a key question, right? Because I think ultimately I think I'm probably going to give the mic to you, Edith, because, well, I mean, when you're talking about a 15-kilometer tunnel with a bore machine, basically, not sure you've got a lot of extra time, have you?
No, not at all. But if you have implemented the sustainability objectives as a good strategy, this kind of label won't give you that much work. The thing is that if you are a developer that you have not been dealing with this before, this will, of course, make you have a lot of time investing in it. But fortunately, now the regulation is asking you to provide this kind of information, maybe in other schemes, or maybe you have other, but this information, you need to declare it, not as the indicators that you have here, because you have a lot, and this is because you have a vision of developing only sustainable infrastructure. In our case, this is completely aligned with our strategy, and this is why we are doing. Not for all developers would be this way, but at least this will help them organize their sustainability objectives in a way that they will also facilitate the way to communicate that for covering the regulation of the country where they are operating or where they have their headquarters. So I see maybe now in this stage in some countries and for a specific developers that are not under regulation that the European want, this would be much work. But in a 2, 3, 4-year basis, then the regulation will come back in different countries that we are seeing different approaches in South America or in other countries where you need to communicate your sustainability performance. This would be completely aligned. So this would be just information that you need to cover for this purpose, but that you are also dealing with other certifications or with your own commitments for communication. For example, if you have the ASA 8000 standard or whatever, an ISO standard or something like this, you will have this information too.
Just to add, it's not only about paperwork. This helps management risks. So there are climate risks in infrastructure that are very relevant. Okay, and this is only a tool to really make the investor developer aware of those risks. And if you have done your homework, maybe you don't have the FAST, but if the risk materializes and you have your stakeholder engagement plan, you will be able to address the risk. Or if you did your homework and you put the height of the port at when the sea rises, your asset will not be as much damaged as in other cases. So again, it's not only paperwork; it's also risk management for the infrastructure.
And if I may add something to it, look at it like, for any developer, a project development is like preparing a tour on a high mountain. It's like a packing list. It's a list of the training you need. It's a list of the team you need to put together. And it's very embarrassing if you are high up and you didn't consider that you need a rope. And the rope is not in your backpack and you have to go back down and get the rope. You lose much more money and time than if you have a checklist up front that will inform you about what you need up front. And I think that's the credible way for developers. I'm just answering the question regarding the developers. There are other parts of the projects that were explained very well before.
If I also maybe share my 2 cents on that, I think, look, many of us have been into that industry forever. And we've seen many of those different standards, label. We all know that somehow we need one of those to actually create that asset class, bring that scale, and so on. So it's true that meanwhile, regulations, especially in Europe, finally woke up. So we also have to take this into consideration. At the same time, I feel it's in all our specific interest to basically adopt such kind of a label, because it's a bit of a chicken and egg story, right? We need to put that extra work a little bit at the beginning, so then we have enough weight to eventually go and see the regulators. I think ultimately my view is that we need incentives, right? We need discount rates from banks, from insurers, and then ultimately that could get there. But if you don't get to that scale, then we will never be there. So because we've been trying to argue, and in my former role at the G20, I tried, and I think convinced Carney at some point that he needs to look back into the data. But this is not going to happen overnight. But then if at some point X% of the industry, through its developer, operators, financier, equity provider, is also looking into that, they won't be able to kind of ignore it, right? So it's also a way to come with a common voice beyond this kind of common language that we talked about, to say, well, initially, remember, so that's aggregating many standards, but there was a lot of investors that were really at the beginning of that exercise. So ultimately, for me, the question is not the cost of action, is the cost of inaction that we all have been facing for a very long time. I know that ultimately, when it comes down to, is it 40 hours, is it 80 hours? Well, in the end, that's quite a lot, right? But I think here we're just talking about trying to get this right so we could get volumes up. So it's in everybody's benefit, the communities, but also all of the entire part of the value chain, if you want. So I'm just conscious of time, and I really appreciate that, you staying late after a full day of work and then listening to all of those details on FAST-Infra Label. But I think it's probably time to bring our discussion to a close. So first, I would like you to thank our panelists and join me to thank them for their contribution tonight. So you've heard about the call to action, so many call to action. So, join the Bloomberg webinar, and so you could learn more about that platform and really assess, how complicated this is going to be. Also, champion the FAST-Infra label by volunteering to bring and to embed this into, test this and pilot this throughout some of your projects. So, and I also wanted to really at this point thank Ginette, who is hiding at the back as our partner head of ESG, who has been leading that effort internally. So, and I know, as I said, like few of the people over here have also been doing that, but more is needed. So on that note, I would like to close our session, not fully, because there are still more drinks and more canapé. And first by thanking the GIB team, Hilda, and then also Daniel and everyone also. So big thank you to all of you, because I think really you've done a great job. Also, Meridiam administrative team, I think some of them are still around. And also, for those of you who continue to participate to InfraWeek until the end of Friday, I wish you a very fruitful week. And on that note, time for a drink. It's also quite warm over here. I'm not the only one to feel it. So it's also time then to strengthen existing connection and to create some new ones. So enjoy yourself and have a lovely evening.